Hi, my name is John Messina, and welcome to another edition of Hey Coach. And here we got the astute Fred Almade, the guidance counselor from St. Lucie West Centennial High School. This is about your 5th appearance on the show, Fred.
Have an enjoyable time every time we're here.
I know you do. I know. I got the renewable contract for you. But I'm really glad you're here. We're going to go over some important topics for parents who have seniors about trying to get scholarships and playing college sports. But let's go through your background a little bit first, Fred. Just give us your background.
Well, I've been in the St. Lucie County schools for almost 25 years,
Right.
my 25th year, I think. Been a guidance counselor for almost 35 years. I've been at St. Lucie West Centennial for a very enjoyable 20 years.
You were there from day one.
I was coaching there day one. I came the second year as a guidance counselor.
Okay.
I was at Lincoln Park for 4 years.
Okay.
But it's been an enjoyable 20 years that I've been there at Centennial.
Okay. Things have changed over the years.
Well, it's changing the entire county. There's not many of us around anymore,
Right,
the old regime. But yeah, it's been an enjoyable time.
Yeah, most of your buddies are like me now.
Yeah,
Okay, retired and everything. But we want to go over a few things that I think are real important for parents, okay? If your student, either the boy or the girl, wants to play athletics in college, what is the first things they should be doing, maybe the end of their junior year?
Well, let me back you up 1 second.
Okay.
What I would recommend is when they come in the 9th grade, that's where it all starts.
Okay.
So sometimes students in the 8th grade have an algebra class or some other high school
Right.
classes, but when they're in the 9th grade, that starts their clock ticking. What I think you're referring to is the NCAA clearinghouse,
Right.
which if you're a Division I or Division II athlete, meaning you're pretty good at your sport,
Right.
you have to have so many courses, grades in those courses, and test scores to obtain the scholarship if you're good enough to do it.
Let's go over the test scores. Exactly what test scores and what do you think they should have?
Well, what the NCAA clearinghouse does, and this is easily accessible by any parent,
Okay.
they can go on the website that's www.eligibilitycenter.org through the NCAA and look up their high school based on their CEEB code.
Okay.
Centennial R codes 101542 to find out what courses are the NCAA clearinghouse or eligibility courses. That's the first thing. They need to know what the students are taking. And then from that point, they'll have an SAT or ACT score, and it's called the sliding scale between your grades and academics. And what are the NCAA, again, clearinghouse courses. And then based on your SAT or ACT score, it's called the sliding scale.
Now, there's some colleges, I know there's a big difference between Division I and Division II, but there's some conferences and colleges have different requirements getting in.
The NCAA clearinghouse for Division I has one policy,
Okay.
but inside, again, we'll use football. The
Okay.
Power Five, the ACC might have a higher SAT minimum score than maybe another conference. So that's interconference, but there is a minimum score, and again, a minimum GPA that the NCAA clearinghouse needs for any Division I athlete.
And what would that be?
Well, to give you an example, they have 16 core courses. As I mentioned, when students come in the 9th grade, they need to really concentrate on their academics, because for Division I, you need 4 years of English. So you take your first year of English in your 9th grade year. So with your 16 qualifying courses, and again, it's not just for high school, it's what the courses are accepted by the NCAA, and every high school has theirs. That's what you really have to concentrate on as a parent. And you can use your SAT score as low, and I say low, as 820, depending on the higher the GPA.
Right. So if you had an 820, which is the low, what do you think your GPA should be?
For 820, your GPA has to be almost over a 2.5.
Okay.
Naturally, the higher the SAT score,
Right.
if you made 1,000,
Right.
your lower your GPA could be maybe as low as a 2.4.
Right.
The minimum GPA
Right.
in those 16 core courses is a 2.3.
Now, that has changed over the years. It has become a little more difficult
Right.
to play.
What I'm telling you now is the new policy.
Okay.
In October of 2016, which now is almost 2 years, they made it tougher.
Okay.
And again, this year's seniors fall under that. So, everybody should be aware of it. We've been getting emails on it. Anybody at the high schools that are doing the clearinghouse should be aware of the new policy.
When should these student athletes start taking their SATs and their ACT tests?
Well, in St. Lucie County, all juniors in the spring of their junior year, for free, get to take the SAT. So that's a bonus for everybody in St. Lucie County. The ACT is offered, again, we offer it in junior year and senior year. So I would say, just on a basic recommendation, start with your SAT in your junior year.
Now, if you do not score what you think is up to par, you may take it as many times as possible. Is that correct?
Correct. You can take it as many times as possible. But really the key is work on getting your grades up.
Right.
So the better you do academically in the classroom, if you're not a good test taker, you can go down as low as, what the minimum is for the SAT.
I always, all the years I was athletic director, and parents would come to me and ask me about, GPAs. I says, start with a 3.0. You get that 3.0, then you got a little bit of leeway with the different scores. Now, another question. Inside a conference, say the ACC, do the schools have the same thing all the way through the conference? Like, does Notre Dame have the same thing as Florida State?
They do. The conferences that I said, there's Power 5 for football. And if the ACC has one requirement, it's for all their member schools.
So becoming part of the ACC, say when Notre Dame, Miami, they joined, Florida State joined the ACC, they committed to their rules on bringing freshmen in.
Correct.
Okay.
They're trying to come up with a uniform, across-the-board score, but again, with all the different schools, all the different sports. I mean, we just mentioned football, but you still would need all this for any kind of academic scholarship.
Now, a lot of times, parents don't fully understand the way scholarships work. I wish there was an in-service that, each county would have and be able to go through this to the parents at the, beginning of maybe junior year. Scholarships are 1 year renewable. So in the case where, say, you were fortunate enough to play Division I, they bring in a new coach. He does not have to renew your scholarship. That is correct, right?
Yeah. A lot of the parents, I think, need to be aware. First of all, we're talking academics.
Right.
But a lot of times, and you've been involved in this when we had students that were being heavily recruited, they always asked what kind of person is the student.
Right.
Is he a good character? Does he have good morals?
Right.
What kind of, then they go into the academic part. But again, getting back to what you were saying, you do want to do well in your academics, and it makes it easier when you're being recruited because you're not a marginal academic student.
And a few years ago, when we were at Centennial together, and we had some great football players, and we had the Division I coaches coming in all the time, they never once, and this is from Coach Saban coming in from Alabama, the coaches from Notre Dame, not once did they ask about the playing ability of those players. How they doing in class? How's their parents? Do they stay off of social media? Things like that. Because coaches nowadays always will find a way of seeing you. I remember about 9 or 10 years ago, Centennial won the State Sportsmanship Award. And we went up to Gainesville, and they had like a banquet with all the winners. And Billy Donovan, who's the coach of Oklahoma City Thunder now, and was the coach of Florida at that time, spoke. And he spoke to the parents that were up there, and spoke to the ADs, and spoke to the principals, and says, don't worry about the athletic ability. Every big-time school or every college has somebody that's going to go find you. We're worried about the other things, They're really, really checking out social media now. I mean, they're taking kids' scholarships away if they abuse social media.
You and I are big football, college football. We love the sport.
How many days we got to go?
Yeah, we got about 40.
Oh, you're counting. And not that you're counting. I'm just checking.
But they had media day for a lot of the big conferences. And David Shaw, who's at Stanford, is one of the best college coaches, not only for what he does on the field, but off the field. He said Stanford has very high academic standards. And he said, when I recruit a student, we already know he can play. We already know he's a Division I football player. And he says, we've already kind of checked on his academics. But what I look at is if I'm watching him play basketball, or if he comes on our campus, I see how he interacts with other players. I see how he interacts with his parents. again, are you on your phone when somebody's talking to you?
Yes.
I see how he interacts because, again, you represent our school. And like you said, social media sometimes gets a little crazy. But that was a big factor for him in who he chooses as your 25 scholarships a year. As you said, they're only 1 year non-renewable.
Right.
25 years scholarships.
And think of Stanford, which probably the highest academic standards outside the Ivy League. And look at how well they do in every sport. I mean, it's just amazing. They're up there for that cup every year for all the different sports. It's just amazing what they go through. But, you know, and a lot of times parents got to realize not every one of your son and daughter's Division I.
Well, we're talking about Division I clearinghouse for all sports.
Right.
There's also Division II.
Right.
Their standards are a little less,
Right.
but again, Division II is a lot different than Division I. And then there's the NAIA, which is a totally different classification. So again, when we're talking Division I, it could be Division II. They still have a sliding scale, although I would say it's a little bit easier.
Right.
And anybody at the local high schools that wanted to see it, you can also go on the NCAA website, and they have all that printed out, so you can kind of get an idea and compare Division I requirements versus Division II.
Yeah, and it changes. And also you have junior college options that people can go to. You can go to junior college for 2 years. I know not in this state, but a lot of other states like Mississippi and California and Arizona, they have very good junior college football, but that's the way to go. But you got to, you know, look at yourself and be honest with your son or daughter. Are you going to be able to play Division I?
And as you mentioned, when coaches come in, we're pretty much talking Division I, but even Division II.
Yeah.
In the spring, Florida's a hotbed for football.
Right.
Florida's a hotbed for a lot of sports, baseball also.
Right.
They're getting better in basketball. The coaches want to see what grades you're making in high school.
Right.
So to me, it all comes back starting in ninth grade.
Right.
Like you said, shoot for 3.0. We'll shoot for 3.0, but you got to understand you're looking at your core courses.
Correct.
And that's where the NCAA clearinghouse comes in, because you can find English, math, science, what they are, and what you need to do to get that GPA.
So your electives are not going to count in that core class.
No offense to elective teachers.
Yes.
But when John Messina was teaching psychology,
I
like
know.
he used to teach years
Yes.
ago, now that can be used as one of your additional ones for clearinghouse.
Right.
But it is not one of the core, although you can use it as an additional one. But you know, your emphasis is on your English, math, science, social studies.
And then a lot of things, the number of scholarships. Now again, football gets, what are they up to now? 60 or?
They get, I think, 85.
85, okay.
Over 4
85,
years, yeah.
okay, that's right. Now, if you look at baseball and softball, just taking off the top of my head, I think it's 10 and a half. Okay, now usually softball teams around 18 to 20 players, baseball teams some 25 to 30. So try to do the math into that. That means I'm giving you, you're my shortstop, you're going to get a quarter of an athletic scholarship. Now, how are you going to make it the rest? Academic or grants?
Right.
So you got to work on that. I know, let's take the University of Miami, for example. They probably have 30 players on their baseball team. And now what they're looking at, they're not all on full scholarships. They're all going to, you know, get a little bit here, a little bit there. That's why you got to work on the academic part.
Right, and again, in the state of Florida, we talked, mentioned a little bit about scholarships.
Yeah.
We're talking about academic, athletic, but there's academic scholarships like the Bright Futures.
Correct.
That you can apply. Now, Miami versus Florida, you got a private and a public, you're not getting the same amount if you get the Bright Futures, but every little bit counts. Back to ninth grade, do well on your courses, you need SAT scores. You know, that's another way that, like you said, if you're not playing a sport like football and you're getting a partial scholarship, which you still have to be eligible for through the clearinghouse, you know, it's a way to offset some money.
And I would encourage parents out there, go visit these schools. I mean, a lot of times your sons and daughters are not going to get the free visits. What did he get, 5 visits?
Yeah,
That's
Division I
big-time
gets 5
recruits.
divisions. Yeah, one thing about the visit they got to understand, under the new rule that we mentioned in 2016, the students have to have, going into their junior year, when they can start their visits, and I'm talking official visits, they have to have passed already 10 of those 16 required clearinghouse courses.
Before they take the visit.
Before they can take the official visits in junior year.
Right.
Now, again, they can do unofficial visits at any time.
Right.
But that's something that also was passed back in 16.
Okay. Now on another topic, and you know, something that, you know, we have been very close to for many, many years, is high school sports has been changing. The rule that they passed in Florida, very, very controversial, was an academic rule passed by the state legislature that states that you can go to any high school that you choose, okay, with the following stipulations. 1, there's room. 2, you provide your own transportation, okay? So technically, you can live in Martin County and go to school up in Indian River County if those 2 stipulations are met. The rule was passed for almost like a free enterprise system. I want to be able to go to the best high school. It has been abused for athletics. You and I know that over the years, because now people are actually going out recruiting kids and bringing them in. It's hard to put this under control. And you know, some states have it, some states don't. What is our county's rule, St. Lucie County?
Well, again, there is a county policy.
Right.
And certain schools are what they call capped.
Okay.
So you just can't say, I want to go to school X and transfer to school Y in the county.
Okay.
There has to be availability in the county.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. Second thing is, if you move with your family, a full move.
You have to have a full and complete move.
Full and complete move. That's different
Yeah. Right.
than you just want to go to a different school.
Right. And
so,
just to interrupt you for a second, that doesn't mean I can go, my mother and father are separated, I can go from my mother to my father. The whole family has to move in. Okay?
Right. But I think when the rule was passed, a lot of people missed the academic part,
Yes.
like you said.
Yeah.
And they thought, well, I just don't like my school, or even for, like you said, for athletic reasons, not for academics, which was started.
Right.
But every school in St. Lucie County is not open for academics either, because, you know, you have your own school and those students have to have academic courses. So if the academic courses are filled up, you know, we just can't take them in. But there is a county policy that comes through student assignment on that.
And the Florida High School Athletic Association is kind of hampered with this, because this was a rule put in by the state legislature, put in by non-athletic people. I remember a bunch of our ADs met with some state legislatures about this, and we kind of told them this is going to happen, and I don't think they really understood that. They kept saying, well, you know, in basketball, we got free agency. Well, this is not pro basketball. This is high school sports. So it has caused a lot of commotion, you know, in this area.
Well, I will say, and you mentioned St. Lucie County, that St. Lucie County did a good job of being above the curve, because we already had choice assignment.
Right.
So a lot of districts across the state did not have this.
Yeah.
So we already had a policy in place, and we just adapted it based on what the legislative said.
Right.
So it's, for us, in my eyes, it wasn't that big of what we were already doing.
Right.
So, you know, St. Lucie County was ahead of the curve.
It's just got to be explained to parents and students out there, this is the way it's done, this is the proper procedure, you know. Another big issue in high school athletics, and not just high school athletics, but athletics in general, is the safety issues. Football, as we see it now, and as much as you and I love high school and college football, it's not going to be the same way in 10 years.
Well, I mean, you see movies about it, pro players with the CTE, I think you're referring to. Safety is number one.
Right.
I know that you were an athletic director in this county for 20 years, and safety was always everything that you talked to the coaches. I've been coaching for 20 plus years, and again, safety always comes first. But when you look at the future, there could be, you know, changes to the rules, especially football, and a lot of other sports too. You look at big time basketball, NCAA. You know, they got the flagrant 1, flagrant 2. So that all filters down to high school sports. So yeah, as we see it today, I can easily see in the future rules changing, dictating the safety of high school students.
And I also look at the number of games. As much as, again, we're big proponents of football, how you and I love football. But if you think of high school football, you have 10 games. You have the Fall Classic. If you play all the way through the playoffs, which not many teams do, but if you do, you're playing 16 games. That's as much as the pros are playing. Could be a little bit too much.
Well, then we always talk about it too, is what about the waking up in the morning going to school for your high school student? You're playing a lot of games. Now, football's on a Friday. That's a little different. But, you know, JVs play on a Wednesday, and they get up the next day, and then, you know, baseball, you have night games.
Night games.
You know, so, you know, academics do matter, and safety and academics kind of go hand in hand. So it's a whole cycle that you have to look at.
And again, it's just the safety rules, the availability of trainers, the practice over the summer in the heat. It's almost like, and again, this has to come from the state associations. Make it mandatory. I know you watch a little film for 15 or 20 minutes, but I think, and this is just me speaking personally, you got to go to classes. Each county should have an in-service and make it mandatory to go, because if you prevent one major injury, just one injury, which you will, look at the benefits of that.
Well, all our student athletes have to view the concussion test. But that is, I don't know how long it is.
15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Maybe 30 minutes.
I'd actually make them go to a class too. So you miss one practice.
They have to watch it. They have to sign off on it. And I think it's good content.
Yeah.
But the reality is everybody thinks that they're never going to get hurt. It's never going to be me that does something wrong or wants to keep playing, and then you run into a problem.
Years ago, you and I, we happened to have a very sad story with Jessica Clinton, young cheerleader at our school, passed away. And her mom, Mrs. Lalou, who was just a wonderful, wonderful human being, really took a sad thing like Jessica's passing, and she fought to put the defibrillators and the AEDs in every school. And the training on that, all the coaches are trained on that and this and that. Well, at Fort Pierce Central and Jay Stewart, our good friend, our longtime AD, they used it twice on a teacher and a coach. And the coaches were able to do that, And again, we got to be trained in this. And if you want to go back to football, I don't think there's going to be kickoffs in 10 years.
Well, again, everything filters down from the pros.
Right.
So if the pros are thinking of, which last year I think they changed the rules, and they might change it again in the future, then you go to college, and then you get on to high school, you're eventually going to have something like a 7-on-7, only with maybe a little more pads. But everything's for safety. Football's the main sport now in the country, and so again, you're right, safety got to be something you got to watch over.
And even the number of games, I know when I was up in New Jersey last year at this time, they were only playing 10 regular season games. And they were playing 8 regular season, their playoffs a little bit longer and stuff. And again, they were worried about the heat. Now, if New Jersey's worried about the heat, what's Florida worried about, It's just, there was a sort of a controversy last week or the week before, the University of North Carolina, when their football coach came out and wasn't really positive about the changes with the CTE in football, and he, had some controversial comments that I don't know, were probably taken out of content, but he wasn't a proponent of changing for safety rules, and
Well, we talked about it, and I know the state of Florida for high school athletics, safety is one of their priorities, and they do conferences all in the fall. The coach from North Carolina, that was his opinion, but I think it got overstated. I don't know if he had all the medical facts. But when you look at the medical facts, one little false move or hit could really cause major damage. So I think what he was trying to say is our sport's good, we do have some problems. It didn't come out that way.
It didn't come out that way. I was going to send him the film Concussion, but I don't know if he'd take it like that. Another big change in high school sports is next year, not this year, this 2018-2019, but 2019-2020, it looks like for all team sports, the state association, in their wisdom, is going to put everybody on a computer-based point system to get into the playoffs. I don't know how that's going to be done. I mean, I just speaking as a former baseball coach, we've seen teams with 10, 11, 12 wins with a state tournament. I know I did that at Miami Pace with 10 wins one year. In order to get into certain tiers, you've got to have certain points based upon the teams that you're playing. Now, they did that for football. It sort of worked. But with football, they kept your district. So they kept saying, if you win your district, you're in, okay? And then everybody else, it's sort of like the old BCS. It's very, very difficult to explain. I guess with some of the other sports, they want to get rid of your districts, which will take away your traditional rivalries and everything based on a computer program. I mean, I know what they're trying to do, I think it is a good idea, but it's got to be explained and done right. It's almost like, say you're playing golf and you're playing in a club championship, okay? Now, if you're the last guy in the championship flight, who are you going to play in the first round? Club champ, right? Why wouldn't you kind of go into that second flight? All right? Who cares? Like, you know, when we hosted the state championship for many years at the Met Stadium, who cared who was the 9A champ or the 8A champ or the 7A champ? So I think what they're proposing is putting 1 to 64 in the top flight, no matter what classes they are, and then 65 to 128 in the second flight. But to me, it's going to be really hard to determine who's really good and who's not.
Well, even throw out who's number 1 and who's number 64. Yeah. Just look at the fact that you're not now required, when that starts, to play anybody you really don't want to play.
Right.
I mean, you might be trying to help your record playing a good team. That doesn't have to mean that it's from St. Lucie County. So our rivalries that we have now in some of the sports, baseball, softball, et cetera, I'm not saying it is going to happen, but it possibly could be gone.
Right.
And rather than playing somebody 2 times, which is, you know, district situation, you might only play them once. And to me, it really hurts the rivalries that we have had. And again, as you mentioned, how many games do you want to play? Yeah. And now you're rooting maybe for certain teams that you're playing to do well. Maybe they're not in St. Lucie County because it doesn't say who you have to play. It just looks at their overall ranking. So there's a lot of maybe, could-bes that is really going to, that first year is going to be different.
The first year is going to be tough. I mean, I hope they do well and they get this across. I kind of like the system they had. I remember when I was coaching, there was only 4 classes. So only 1 team got out of the district. So you really had a true champion. You know, now you have 9 classes. I don't know how many they're going to have then. But here's the hardest thing. I beat you. Now I'm going to root for you the rest of the year because I need you to do well. But suppose you do real well and then you come back and have more points than I do.
Well, again, the district playoffs is like a second chance for everybody to get in. So you and I know, just using baseball or softball, a team that was last maybe had a bad year.
Sure.
On one particular day, they could win.
Yeah.
And it really shakes everything up.
And I always just throw baseball. You don't throw your best pitcher every game. So, I mean, how are you going to do that? I always felt if it wasn't broken, don't change it and everything. But this is the way they're going to. I wish them the best of luck, and I'll support them as long as they do it right. I think football went okay. I know 2 years ago it wasn't in, but they went out a situation where Treasure Coast beat Central during the year, finished with the same record. But if the playoffs were there at that time, Central would have went ahead. Okay?
And again, those are all things when you're playing a game you don't think about.
You don't think about it.
But in the future, non-football, you might never get a chance because it'd be a rival you might not play.
And we're done. I like how fast this went. Huh? It always goes fast when we're talking. We're a half hour closer to the college football season started. So I want to thank you so much for coming in, Fred. I'll probably bring you back again. I got to check what your contract says and everything. But we want to say hi to everybody and welcome to another edition of Hey Coach.